But anyways, the logic is this. See, God is everything. God is infinite consciousness. Truly infinite consciousness. What infinite means, it has no bounds. That means it has no limits upon it. That means it extends in all directions, in all dimensions, not just spatially, but in every possible way that you could imagine. So, if God is everything, absolutely everything, then God is those things that you would call devilry. Whatever you think devilry is, however you define it. You want to define slavery or genocide or sexual abuse or the abuse of children or whatever you want to define as, the epitome, the pinnacle of devilry. And then minor forms of devilry like lying and cheating and stealing and tax evasion, whatever. Maybe you think war is the ultimate form of devilry, genocide, something like that. So God is all those things, if God is everything. See, that's the logic of it. The logic of it is oneness. That's the fundamental principle behind the entire universe. It's oneness. Everything is connected to everything else, and the only way anything can exist is if everything exists. So see, as a finite human consciousness here in this little dream that you've been living in, it seems to you that, life is this certain way, and it has to be this way, and it can't be some other way because of all the limits that are placed upon you, physically, materially, and so forth. There are limits upon what your body can do, what your mind can think, and what you can even imagine. But this is all finite consciousness. God is infinite consciousness. Infinite consciousness means it's completely unlimited as to what it can imagine. It can literally imagine anything. So literally, God can imagine a physical, material devil if he wanted to. I say he, really, it's an it, or it's you. But God can imagine, because it's infinite consciousness, it can imagine anything. So it can imagine war, genocide, abuse, exploitation, slavery. It can imagine physical demons and devils, an infinite number of different kinds. Just like in your dreams, when you're sleeping at night, fruit fly flying around. When you're sleeping at night, there's no limit to the kind of horrors that you can imagine. I mean, you've had nightmares. Think back to the kind of nightmares you've had. Think of the diversity of all the crazy nightmares that you've concocted with your mind. Well, see, God is that taken to infinity. So if God wants to, God, infinite consciousness, can construct its own physical material hell if it wants to. Because it's infinite creative potential. Infinite creative potential means that it can imagine atoms, molecules, cells, creatures, aliens, angels, devils. It can dream all sorts of nightmares. It can dream bliss realms of beautiful sex and food and whatever other material pleasures you desire, money, vacations, anything. The universe can literally imagine anything because it is pure infinite imagination. It's everything. And the only reason anything can exist is because everything exists within infinite consciousness. It's like an infinite possibility space. So now think about this. Imagine you are this infinite possibility space. And of course, now here's a further little wrinkle to the logic. If we're talking about oneness and everything, see, if God is everything, that means, what about you? And if God is infinite consciousness, what about your consciousness? You're conscious right now. You're a thing right now. So a thing is part of everything. That means you're God. There can't be a God separate from a you, because God is the creator of everything. And the way it creates things is not by sitting outside of it and then creating it and being separate from it, but by actually incarnating as it. So it's incarnated as you right now, listening to me, imagining this whole conversation. So this is what God is imagining right now. So you are it, but it is also everything else. And there's no limit as to how it can be. It can be any way it wants. Right now, it just happens to choose to be the way that it is right now. If it wasn't doing that, then you couldn't exist as a human. You would be something else. You'd be a kangaroo or a devil or an angel or whatever else it was thinking of. Or if it was thinking of nothing, you'd be nothing. Or if it was thinking of everything, you'd be everything. You see, this would present you with an existential crisis. You would think that you're losing your mind. You think you're going crazy. You would probably go to a psych ward, and then there the shrinks would evaluate you. And if you were honest with them about what you were experiencing and what you were conscious of, that you were everything, they would put you on antipsychotic medication. That's what they would do. Because they don't understand how radical and serious this is. You know, we're not just talking about human psychology here. We're talking about the origin of all of existence, all of creation. So the reason God can create anything is because it is everything. So the way it creates is just by imagining whatever it wants. Right now, that doesn't mean that your little human ego can imagine whatever it wants. That's not what I'm saying. Your little human ego is something it's imagining. That's a limit it's placing upon itself. Right? So you see, infinite consciousness constrains itself into something finite, which resembles your human experience. And it does feel very finite. It is literally finite because it's imagining itself to be finite, but it doesn't have to always be that way. It could unimagine it the next moment. Now, will it? Well, the problem again is that if it did, you would lose your mind. So it doesn't, for your own sake. But also it can, and then people do lose their minds. People lose their minds just throughout the course of life, through extreme stress. People have psychotic episodes, schizophrenic episodes, whatever. Or people take psychedelics and lose their mind. People do spiritual practice and lose their mind through meditation or yoga or self-inquiry. So there's a lot of ways to lose your mind. And it can also go wrong. It's not always good to lose your mind. You can lose your mind in a controlled, healthy manner, and you can lose your mind in an uncontrolled, unhealthy, dysfunctional, suicidal manner. So you got to be careful about how you go about losing your mind. I don't recommend the dysfunctional path because that can cause a lot of damage to yourself and to others. And we've talked about that in the past. But anyways, so the logic of it here is that the only way you can have anything is if you have everything. So when you have everything, that means you are everything. Consciousness is everything. God is everything. If God is everything, literally, then how can God be upset at anything? How can God judge or condemn anything? Because if God was judging or condemning anything, it would be judging and condemning its own nature. In other words, another way to put it is truth, since God is truth, since there is nothing outside of God because it's infinity and it's everything that there could ever possibly be, that is the truth. This absolute truth, if it didn't forgive itself and accept all parts of itself, that means it would be in conflict with itself. That means it would be denying aspects of itself. That means truth would not be fully accepting itself as truth. Truth would be at war with itself. And sure enough, this does happen within the human realm of limited consciousness, but it can't actually happen at the highest levels of consciousness, at infinite consciousness. It can't happen. At infinite consciousness, consciousness is too conscious to deny or resist any parts of itself. And when this happens, the idea that God would condemn, judge, hate, demonize, or not forgive any aspect of itself is ludicrous. It's tantamount to insanity. You'd have to literally be insane to judge your own self, because the infinite self, the self that is everything, is the only thing that exists. It's the only thing that can be, just by virtue of the fact that it's everything, and you can't have more than everything. Everything is everything. It also includes nothing. So, when you've got absolute everything, and you're fully conscious of it as that, then how can you judge it? How can you not love it?